The founder of the Khalsa, or Sikh Brotherhood, Guru Gobind Singh, created a distinct nation that would fight for a just cause and spread righteousness all over the world. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us as Sikhs to ensure our actions are always to the highest standards. Our code of conduct, or reh, outlines how we should live our life and never shy away from doing our duty. Nor should we ever forget that we represent our Guru in all we do. And so it was that 21 Sikhs would abide by the Khalsa principles to the bitter end, in standing firm and not surrendering at Saragarhi. Even when vastly outnumbered against 10,000 enemy tribesmen, they had the utmost belief in the Sikh national anthem and the decree that, when my mortal life comes to an end, may I die fighting fiercely in battle. They did indeed achieve this glory, and in so doing cemented the reputation of our race as staunch, loyal, and committed to a just cause. So let us turn to the Battle of Saragarhi. Allow me to illustrate what exactly happened on the frontier and why it is so important for us to continue to remember it today. The region we are talking about is the Samana on the northwest frontier, now the tribal area of Pakistan. It lay 267 miles from the Sikh homeland and Amritsar, and was an unruly area but of vital importance because of the Khyber Pass and during the period known as the Great Game with Russia. The Samana was occupied in May 1891 and two large forts built on the ridge. The first, called Gulistan, stood 6,152 feet above sea level and could accommodate 200 men. On the adjacent Mustan Plateau was Fort Lockhart at 6,496 feet, which could garrison 300 men. To communicate between the main forts, the British had tried to set up telegraph posts between Lockhart and Gulistan, but found this was unsuitable as the tribesmen kept cutting the wire. The answer then was to use heliograph, a device that sends Morse code using flashes of light. Thus, Saragarhi was built midway between the two forts to relay orders from the commander to his second in command. This made Saragarhi the most crucial of the smaller posts. This is the only known photo showing what Saragarhi looked like before it was destroyed. The building of the forts and posts was complete by January 1897, and men such as these, the 36th Sikh Regiment of Bengal Infantry, were sent to the frontier to man them. The 36 Sikhs had been raised specifically by the British to fight on the northwest frontier. Men were recruited in Punjab by the infamous Captain Holmes, who challenged them to a wrestling match with the proviso that if they lost, they would enlist. The Sikhs were under the command of Lieutenant Colonel John Horton, who you see seated in the centre, and his 2IC was Major Charles Devore, who you see just to his right. Both officers would distinguish themselves on the frontier, although tragically Horton would be killed in action leading his men in the subsequent Tira campaign. Devore brought his pregnant wife and child along to the Samana. And you'll find out a little bit later what happened to Mrs. Devore. 1897 was the year of a tribal uprising in the region, witnessed by a young Lieutenant Winston Churchill at Malakand in July of that year. The reason for the uprising was connected to the drawing of borders and boundaries by a British commission. The Pathans sensed that their homeland was being divided and taken away. Despite the Emir of Afghanistan trying to reassure his people that this was not the case, the mullahs declared jihad against the British, and various tribes answered that call, including the Afridi and Araksi tribes in the Tira lands near the Samana. By August 1897, around 20,000 Pathans, such as these Afridis pictured at Ajirga in the following year, were assessed to be descending upon the Samana. Horton gave orders for his 400 men to man the various posts and sent dispatch for reinforcements from the garrison town of Kohat. For 2 whole weeks, the tribesmen moved around the area, trying to draw out the thinly spread Sikh regiment, testing their patience to fight openly in a game of cat and mouse. The tribesmen had no success and soon realised it was because of Saragarhi relaying those messages between the forts that enabled Horton to move his men and counter any potential threat. And so 10,000 Pathans diverted to encircle Saragarhi and cut it off. The 30-year-old Havildar Ishar Singh commanded the 20 sepoys stationed at Saragarhi. He had with him an experienced signaller, Gurmukh Singh, whose task was to relay messages via heliograph. The rest of the sepoys were on average 21 years of age. Some were married, but this was their first taste of battle. They also had with them a camp follower called Dud. The 21 dug in to defend their positions, each Sikh pitted against 476 enemy tribesmen. Armed with the Martini Henry Mark IV rifle, the Sikhs could fire around 20 rounds per minute, but with only 400 rounds of ammunition each, they could only hope to inflict such damage to the enemy as to demoralise them from fighting, while awaiting reinforcements to arrive. On the morning of the 12th of September, the jihadis rushed to Saragarhi with the aim of overcoming its walls. They were repulsed by a hail of Sikh bullets and suffered around 60 killed and wounded. Taking cover behind rocks and folds in the ground, they slowly edged forward, but the greater danger was unknown to the Sikh defenders. 2 tribesmen had managed to reach the post during the initial attack, and at a dead angle began digging. Seeing this opportunity, the tribesmen rushed the post. The Sikhs defended the entry as best as they could, with bayonets fixed. Ishar Singh led his remaining men in hand-to-hand combat. The enemy piled all their own dead to get in, and it was too late. The numbers finally overwhelmed the Sikhs. A sepoy secured the guardroom and fired on through the window. It is documented that he killed 20 tribesmen before a fire was set which consumed him and Saragarhi. This photo shows the aftermath, clearly showing burn marks. The Singh-Sohal Guru Singh was there until the end too. He sent his final message before taking his weapon and exhausting his rounds upon the Pathans, but saving the last shot for himself. The Sikhs had lasted just over 6 hours in the onslaught. Saragarhi had fallen. But the fighting raged on at nearby Fort Gulistan, where the Sikhs were unflinching and bold, fighting non-stop under the command of Major Devore for 30 hours. There, the men argued amongst themselves over who would volunteer to rush the enemy positions just outside their fort. So great was their Khalsa spirit and thirst for glory, as at Saragarhi, that some did not await orders, simply jumping over the walls to rescue colleagues pinned down by the enemy, rushing the Pathan positions and capturing enemy standards along the way. The arrival of the Kohat field force under General Yeatman Biggs lifted the siege and scattered the enemy tribesmen. The area was cleansed of bodies, and the cairn built from the bricks of Saragarhi in honour of the dead. The cairn you can see at the bottom right of the picture. The field force took on the 36 Sikhs and reformed to become the Tira Expeditionary Force, and as this main image shows, the British and Indians then marched to the Afridi homeland in a punitive campaign to subdue the enemy. The details of what had happened at Saragarhi travelled fast, being telegrammed by a Times correspondent back to London and then reported in newspapers around the world. A telegram was sent to Balmoral, and Queen Victoria, alerted to the accounts of the fighting on the Samana. She wrote in her diary about the splendid behaviour of the Sikhs. Recognition on behalf of the Crown was duly granted when Her Majesty's government recorded their higher appreciation of the gallant conduct and admirable qualities shown by those who fought. The 21 were all awarded the Indian Order of Merit, their families given a pension and land. The 36 Sikhs were granted a battle honour day for Saragarhi and a regimental holiday. In recent times, myths about the battle have also arisen, and Parliament gave a standing ovation that UNESCO has listed it as one of several examples of heroism. All are false. I make this point because it does the story of Saragarhi an injustice to peddle such falsities. But no doubt we will continue to battle against these inaccuracies as the story becomes Bollywoodized, not with one but at least 3 films in the pipeline. The British recognised Saragarhi could inspire more Sikhs to serve with distinction. A memorial was placed on the Samana, and memorial gurdwaras were built at Firozpur and Amritsar. The Viceroy of India, Lord Curzon, summed up their purpose, stating, "These monuments will testify to later ages the valour of your race and the gratitude of mine." He further eulogised the Sikhs at an event in Lahore, saying, "Never may a day arise when the British government in time of need cannot rely upon the Sikhs." This is what Saragarhi looks like today. These are its ruins in modern-day northwest Pakistan. Let's ensure the story of the brave 21 is never forgotten, and that their legacy lives on through our own service. They did not simply defend these crumbling stones, but rather fought with conviction in their Khalsa principles for a righteous cause. Thank you for being here today and for helping spread the story of Saragarhi far and wide.